Okay, we're going to be talking about Synanon, part one on Synanon. It was a drug rehabilitation program that started in 1958 by Charles Chuck Dederich Sr. and it turned into a cult. Synanon, originally established as a drug rehabilitation program, was founded by Charles Chuck Dederich Sr., born 1913, died 1997. In 1958, in Santa Monica, California, United States, by the early 1960s, Synanon became an alternative community centered on group truth-telling sessions that came to be known as the Synanon game, a form of attack therapy. The group ultimately became the Church of Synanon. That's when it became a cult. In the 1970s, Synanon disbanded in 1991 due to members being convicted of criminal activities, including attempted murder and retroactive loss of tax-exempt status with the Internal Revenue Service due to financial misdeeds, destruction of evidence, and terrorism. It has been called one of the most dangerous and violent cults America has ever seen. And from what I heard, it was somehow connected to the Jonestown cult, People's Temple cult, with Jim Jones, is what I've heard. The beginnings, Charles Dederich, a reformed alcoholic cult leader and a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, was known to speak for hours uninterrupted at AA meetings. Those suffering from addictions to illegal drugs were not always welcome to AA because it was considered that their addiction issues were significantly different from those that suffered from alcoholics. Dederich, after taking LSD, decided to create his own program to respond to their needs. He was said to have coined the phrase, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life," after his small group called Tender Loving Care gained a significant following. Dederich incorporated the organization in the Synanon Foundation in 1958. Synanon is a word of his own invention, integrating togetherness with unknown. Synanon began as a 2-year residential program, but Dederich soon concluded that its members could never graduate because a full recovery was impossible. The program was based on testimony of fellow group members about their tribulations and urges of relapsing and their journeys to recovery. The Synanon organization also developed a business that sold promotional items. This became a successful enterprise that for a time generated roughly $10 million per year. In 1959, Synanon moved from their small storefront to an abandoned armory on the beach. In the early 1960s, Charles was able to utilize the media and his Hollywood associates to promote his organization. In 1967, Synanon purchased the Club Casa del Mar, a large beachside hotel in Santa Monica, as its headquarters, and a dormitory for those undergoing treatment for drug addiction. Later on, Synanon acquired a large building that had been the home of the Athens Athletic Club in Oakland, California, and then transformed it into a residential facility for Synanon members. Outsiders were permitted to attend the Synanon game there as well. Children were reared communally in the Synanon school. Juveniles in the justice system were often ordered to enroll in Synanon by California courts. Professionals, even those without drug addictions, were invited to join Synanon. The New York psychiatrist Daniel Castillo, MD, visited in 1962, lived there in 1963, and wrote a book about his experiences. He later founded AREBA, the oldest surviving private addiction treatment center in the United States, as well as Daytop Village. So he helped start Daytop. This Daniel Castillo, medical doctor, one of the world's largest therapeutic communities. Control over members occurred through the game. The game was presented as a therapeutic tool and likened to a form of group therapy, but it has been criticized as a form of social control, in which members humiliated one another and encouraged the exposure of one another's innermost weaknesses. Beginning in the mid-1970s, women in Synanon were required to shave their heads, and married couples were made to break up and take new partners. Men were given forced vasectomies, and a few pregnant women were forced to have abortions. The film director George Lucas needed a large group of people with shaved heads for the filming of the movie THX 1138 and hired some of these extras from Synanon. Robert Altman hired members of Synanon to be extras for the gambling scenes in the movie California Spirit. Practices. Entrance into the Synanon community required a strong initial commitment. Newcomers were first interviewed by Synanon leadership to gain entrance into the community. Upon their arrival, those newcomers were forced to quit using drugs cold turkey, going through a withdrawal for the first few days in the program. Furthermore, for the first 90 days in the community, members were expected to cease contact with outside friends and family. During its first decade, Synanon members entered into a 1 to 2 year program in 3 stages aimed at preparing members to re-enter greater society. During the first stage, members did community and housekeeping labor. During the second stage, members worked outside of the community but still resided within the community. Finally, during the third stage, members both worked and lived outside the community but still attended regular meetings. After Synanon's transition into an alternative society in 1968, this program changed to a lifetime rehabilitation program with the premise that drug addicts would never truly be well enough to return to society. One of the most distinguishing practices of Synanon community of the Synanon community was therapeutic practice, commonly referred to as the game. The game was a session during which one member would talk about themselves and then endure intense criticism by their peers. During this practice, members were encouraged to be critical of everything, using harsh and profane language. The practice has been criticized as a form of attack therapy. Outside the game, members were required to act civilly to each other, while in the game, members criticized each other, but left as friends and supportive community members. The game served not only as Synanon's most prominent form of therapy and personal change, but also worked as a way for leaders to collect the opinions of community members. Because there was no hierarchy in the game, members could freely criticize Synanon's highest leadership, who would then take members' concern into consideration when they decided policy. The game turned into a 72-hour version and was admitted by Dederich to be brainwashing. The game was eventually used to pressure people to submit to Dietrich's will, abort pregnancies, undergo vasectomies, and commit violence. Dederich eventually changed his way of thinking about Synanon and transformed it into something resembling a human progressive group. Synanon moved to create schooling for members, and Dederich wanted members to mentally change in order to improve society on the outside. The school was headed by Al Ballman, who believed in an innovative physiology and aimed to teach children in the same manner to think differently. The school attracted lawyers, screenwriters, and business executives, all wanting to educate their children in a progressive environment. Lifetime rehabilitation concept. Beginning in 1964, the legal authorities began to investigate Synanon's practices. The concept of lifetime rehabilitation did not agree with therapeutic norms, and it was alleged that the Synanon group was running an unauthorized medical clinic. Synanon expanded an old Trans-Pacific Marconi RCA radio station and Molly's Bay, now Marconi Conference Center, State Historic Park. It was alleged that on remote properties in California, such as Marshall and Marion County and Badger Tolkien County, Synanon had erected buildings without legally required permits, had created a trash dump and built an airstrip. Taxation issues also arose in response to these accusations. Dederich declared that Synanon was a tax-exempt religious organization, the Church of Synanon. That's when it became a cult. Legal problems continued despite this change. Children who had been assigned to Synanon began running away, and an underground railroad had been created in the areas that sought to help them return to their parents. Beatings of Synanon opponents and his ex-members, splitties, occurred across California. Beatings occurred in the Synanon basements. A state grand jury in Marion County issued a scathing report in 1978 that attacked Synanon for the very strong evidence of its child abuse, and also for the monetary profits that flowed to Dederich. The grand jury report also rebuked the governmental authorities involved for their lack of oversight, although it stopped short of directly interceding in the Synanon situation. Though many San Francisco area newspapers and broadcasters covered the Synanon case, they were largely silenced by legal action from Synanon lawyers who made claims of libel. These lawsuits ultimately turned out to be a large part of Synanon's ongoing, but given journalists access to Synanon's own internal documents. Criminal activity and collapse. Synanon is purported to have been involved in several criminal activities, such as the disappearance of Rose Lena Coe in late 1972 or early 1973. Coe had received a court order to enroll in Synanon before she disappeared. She had not been seen or heard from since. Initially, Synanon did not support violence. Dederich later changed the rules to allow for violence in order to maintain control. Much of the violence by Synanon had been carried out by a group within Synanon called the Imperial Marines. Over 80 violent acts were committed, including mass beatings that hospitalized teenagers and ranchers who were beaten in front of their families. People who left the organization were at risk of physical violence for being a splittee. One ex-member, Phil Ritter, was beaten so severe that his skull was fractured, and he subsequently fell into a coma with a near fatal case of bacteria meningitis. In mid-1978, the NBC Nightly News produced a new segment on the controversy surrounding Synanon. Following the broadcast, several executives of the NBC network and its corporate chairman allegedly received hundreds of threats from Synanon members and supporters. NBC continued with a series of reports on the Synanon situation on the NBC Nightly News. The Point raised light, a small circulation weekly newspaper in Marion County, would later receive the Pulitzer Prize for public service for the covering Synanon at a time when other news agencies avoided reporting. Several weeks after NBC began receiving threats, on October 10, 1978, two Synanon members placed a de-rattled rattlesnake in the mailbox of attorney Paul Morantz of Pacific Palisades, California. Morantz had successfully brought suit on behalf of people who were being held against their will by Synanon. The snake bit him, and he was hospitalized for 6 days. The incident, along with the press coverage, prompted an investigation by the police and the government into Synanon. 6 weeks later, the Los Angeles Police Department performed a search of the ranch in Badger that found a recorded speech by Dederich in which he said, "We're not going to mess with old time turn the other cheek religious postures. Other religious postures is don't mess with us. Yeah, you can get killed. You can get killed dead, literally dead. These are real threats, he snarled. They are draining life's blood from us and expecting us to play by their silly rules. We will make the rules. I see nothing frightening about it. I am quite willing to break some lawyer's legs and next break his wife's legs and threaten to cut their child's arm off. That is the end of that lawyer. This is a very satisfactory, humane way of transmitting information. I really do want an ear and a glass of alcohol on my desk. During investigations, researchers also came across multiple lawsuits and arrests against Synanon members. Dederich was arrested while drunk on December 2nd, 1978. Two other Synanon residents, Joe Muskia and Lance Kenton, son of the musician Stan Kenton, were also arrested and pleaded no contest to charges of assault and conspiracy to commit murder. Lance Kenton was sentenced to a year in prison while his associates went to jail. Dederich received probation because his doctors claimed that due to ill health, he would most likely die in prison as a condition of probation. He was disavowed from taking part in managing Synanon. Synanon struggled to survive without its leader and also with a severely tarnished reputation. The Internal Revenue Service revoked the organization's tax-exempt status and ordered them to pay $17 million in back taxes. The bankrupted Synanon, which formally dissolved in 1991. Synanon's influence in the behavior modification field. Mel Wasserman, influenced by his Synanon experience, founded CEDU education. CEDU schools use the confrontation model of Synanon. The CEDU model was widely influential on the development of parent choice, private paid residential programs. People originally inspired by the CEDU experience developed or strongly influenced a significant number of the schools in the therapeutic boarding school industry. Father William B. O'Brien, the founder of the New York's Daytop Village, and included Synanon's group encounters and confrontation approach and his research in addiction and treatment methods. The author, journalist, and activist Maja Savala claims to chart the influence of Synanon and other programs, including Phoenix House, Straight Incorporated, and boot camps, in addition to those mentioned above. Successes. Despite its controversies and downfall, the Synanon program is credited with helping some people with their addictions. For example, Synanon was credited with the recovery. The heroin-addicted jazz musicians Frank Rehab, Arnold Ross, Joe Pass, and Art Pepper. Pepper discussed the Synanon experiences at length in his autobiography, Straight Life. And the actor Matthew Beard. In 1962, Bass formed a band composed of Synanon patients who recorded an album titled Sounds of Synanon. The Synanon organization was praised by the motivational speaker Florrie Fisher in her speeches to high school students, and she credited Synanon with curing her of her heroin addiction. Synanon also inspired the creation of successful programs such as Delaney Street Foundation, co-founded by John Mayer, a former Synanon member. Many former members still value what they see as the positive aspects of Synanon, primarily as its strong sense of community, and remain in close contact, in person or through online chat groups, and have gone into business together. A branch of Synanon that was founded in Germany in 1971 is still in operation. Popular depictions. In 1965, Colombian Pictures movie Synanon, directed by Richard Queen, was set at and filmed in Synanon and starred Edmund O'Brien and Edward O'Brien as Chuck Dederich, and as well as Chuck Connors, the rifleman fame, and Stella Stevens, Richard Conte, and Eartha Kitt. Mannix Season 1, Episode 22 depicts Synanon members involved with the fictitious 45 daily clarion bombing that killed 14 men. Synanon is referred to in Bob Dylan's song Lenny Bruce from his album Shot of Love. Bruce never made it to Synanon. It also referred to the song Opening Doors from Stephen Sondheim's musical Merrily We Roll Along, which mentions it as a hypothetical song title in a satire review of the 1960s. Synanon is mentioned in Joan Didion's 1979 essay, The White Album. Philip K. Dick makes several references to Synanon in his 1977 novel Scanner Darcy and in a 1981 novel Valis. Deborah Swisser, a former Synanon member, recounts her experience growing up in several Synanon communes. In her one-woman show, Hundreds of Sisters and One Big Brother. Hollywood Park, a memoir of Mikhail Joyet, founder of the Airborne Toxic Event, was published in May 2020 and describes Joliet's life and escape from Synanon. Daniel Gubner refers to this cult as a National Book Award long listed. The boat builder, the main character, discusses a drug rehabilitation cult, the Church of Nibor, which is based on Synanon. The group is featured in the 2021 book Cultish, The Language of the Fanatism by American linguist Amanda Montell. Montell's father was a member as a child and spoke freely to Amanda about his experience in Synanon. Okay, this is part one on the Synanon drug rehab and later become a cult. And the part two, we're going to be showing a movie about Synanon. We're not going to do the 1965 one as of yet. We'll decide later. We're going to be doing the one with Paul Michael Glaser movie, and he has his own newspaper, along with the lady that played on Lou Grant. She stars in this as well. We're going to be showing that in part two. We may have the interview with the attorney that was bit by the rattlesnake by Synanon cult. There's going to be an interview there. We might do that as part three. We haven't decided, but we'll probably do the part two with the Synanon movie that was made with starring Paul Michael Glaser. So we're in it right now, part one of Synanon.